Hi everybody, Mark Cleghorn here for the Academy. Welcome to another live session. Today we're going to be looking at some Photoshop stuff, but don't tune off yet. We've got some great images featuring from last week's shoot, in fact. So we've kind of chosen Jabez's photographs, and we just thought we'd kind of give you some kind of really good photo finishing kind of tips and tricks, both in Bridge and within Photoshop itself. Just before we were going live there, in fact, I was just creating a new master background, in fact, really. So we're going to be installing backgrounds today, using backgrounds, changing backgrounds, creating a background, doing some funky effect for Physique. We'll be looking at some great kind of swap into monochrome and everything else with it and things really. Okay, so pretty much from the shoot that we did with Jabez last week, or Jay, we narrowed it down to around about 400 images. Probably shot about 700 to 800 images. I could have done basically another cull on these to the best of the best is the best, as it were. I've just done some quick 5 stars to kind of give us a variety to kind of work from. So do you know what, let's just quickly jump straight into a big image, as it were. All right, so let's kind of just go into a quick background swap so you can kind of get the idea. I've got 2 shots here. Okay, I'll just put them side by side in RAW to begin with. We're working from the RAW files. I'd usually go from the RAW file and turn it into a JPEG first, and then obviously go through the process. But just so you can see, we're working with full res files and everything else with it and things ready. We're kind of working through it. So let's bring those into RAW. So Control R from Bridge. Lightroom will work very, very similar. Anyway, and basically you can see between the two, one has had no changes at all, so basically as shot, and the other one's had some real kind of edgy effects kind of done with it. As I mentioned before, once I've kind of gone into the kind of the basic adjustments, that has to be done on a calibrated screen, of course. Bring the whites down just a little bit. Okie doke. Once they're done here, then, whoops, wrong button. Then we want to actually save these files. So if I just click down for a minute, now I could open them directly into Photoshop itself. All right, let me just find Jabez shoot in here. Okay, and we'll just go Jabez, and that would be JFR, so that's JPEG from RAW. And then obviously the date is the 07, last week was the 5th, 15/21. Now these have already had a rename, and they've also got their metadata already in the image itself. So those 2 images done already. So let's just launch a new window for a minute. So just File New, yep. And then if I step backwards into the Jabez folder, we can now see the Jabez at JFR 07 15/21. So that's July 15th. 2021. And I'm just going to kind of select both of these and just hit them and bring them both into Photoshop. So I mentioned just before we got going, I was actually kind of creating an old master background here. And before I kind of just show you what's going, let's go with image, and I usually have a F10 rotation. So it's image, edit. Okay, so let's just bring it in. I just had a total mental block then. Okay, so Control T just to rotate this round. I'd usually, when making a background, make sure it fits the full resolution of any image. And then pretty much using one of the blend options here, depends on how we want it to work. We really want it to work with a background, but that old master, as you can see, it's beginning to do its job already. Screen is good as well. If we want it lighter, obviously the multiply and the darken will kind of act on the blacks, whereas the screen will lighten the darks, as it were. So kind of just choosing the kind of overlay that works the best in the blend mode. We're just going to crop straight into screen. No, lighten is it. There we go. But before I do anything, I'm going to just go back onto the background layer, so of Jabez himself, and I'm just going to select one of the selection tools, and I'm just going to go select subject at the top. So we're going to allow the Adobe Sensei to do its kind of job in a basic selection We're only in kind of demonstration, but this would be good enough to go to an album probably with, or even to small print. I want to do a little bit more work if it was going to go into the likes of a big image for the wall and so on. We just realized before we went live, in fact, that we're really down on RAM on this computer. So already, can we just cut back to the screen so we can see it live? That's okay. So basically, got Jabez there, so let's go Control J to duplicate that layer. And then we're just going to bring him on top. So instantly now we've kind of changed the background. It's not too bad. But obviously we want to kind of darken this background just a little bit. It's a bit too hot. So in other words, we've either got to go into Control L for levels and darken that background. It depends on the way that you want to work it. For me though, it's just too sharp. So I definitely want to go to Filter, Blur and Gaussian Blur. Now I'm showing you some techniques here that we're going to be mimicking again in a minute. Okay. So I just wanted to go kind of quite fast first of all, so you can kind of get a gauge of what we're going. So we've just taken this image from the kind of the plain background. We've given it a bit of a funky effect, even though I didn't show that to you in Photoshop. We'll show that to you in a minute. Then we've kind of created a cutout of him. But before we did that, we brought in a background and then we actually kind of just laid him on top again and things really. So again, pretty good. But probably this background here is going to be a better background if we look for something a little bit more dynamic. So if I just go to right click and I convert to smart object for a minute, I'm going to just go into click and replace contents. And at this stage, I want to go into the background folder. It's just here, in fact, it's the last folder I opened because I was creating the monomaster background from this Sage backs that I had here, okay? But I'm going to bring in the Spotlight. And at this stage, it's going to either resize it if I resize the master when I brought it in. So it could be too big, it could be too small, depends on the resolution of the file. It looks quite a big resolution file, or something's big's going on, in fact, because the wheel is kind of going really, really slow. But we want to really kind of just wait that couple of minutes. It looks like there we go, it's there. All right. So again, as far as the image is concerned, this image, it's kind of brought it in, and we need to definitely resize it. I just hit the Control key by mistake. Escape out of that. Any 3-minute jokes while we're waiting for that to happen? Okay, let's do that again. So Control T. That's what we need, Brandon, some 3-minute jokes, yeah? Okay, I'm just going to shrink this. I just did Control T to transform. I just zoomed out so I could basically just see pretty much the whole image. And then we're getting very close. So it looks more like a stadium now. Agreed, it looks more like it's a, what did you call it? Brandon shoots a lot of wrestling videos. It's a match card. That's me and Brandon going against each other soon. No, it's not. Okay, so you can see already though, it's quite a dynamic image, and we can kind of add into that with extra flares or whatever it be and things really. So that's pretty cool. Let's just switch that one off for a minute. We'll switch our background layer down. It is in the wrong RGB. Can you see it's in CMYK here? So in this case, let's just go into image mode and we'll change this into RGB. That's going to apply for a lot more of our images, and I'm just going to save that now. We'd only use CMYK if we were going out to commercial print, so we were actually going to create a background from it. So in a very, very similar way here, if you want to kind of work from folders or actions or whatever it would be, let's kind of create an action to do something similar as far as load in the backgrounds is concerned. So action first of all, let's create a new folder and call this backgrounds. Okie doke, and I'm going to create a new one called Stadium. And we're just going to press record. And I'm just going to go to File, Open, go to the background folder. So as you can see here, it's on my desktop. I always want to remain it in one place so it can always go looking for the same file, and we never really want to actually change that file, as it were. Let's go in and just choose the athletic stadium. So it's pretty good, but let's, we're going to copy it now. So Control A and Control C. So that's select all and then copy. I can shut this one down, save on the RAM, and then I Control V to paste this in. Now I'm just going to go into Control T, that's free transform, and we'll make it big enough as if it was for the resolution. Okay, so we're pretty much there. Double clicking it. That is the action. So press stop now. Remember, this little red record button here at the bottom is continue to record all the time. Let's just press stop. So if I kind of just chuck that away a minute and we just play the action, so in this case, click onto stadium, click on play, and then that's going to go and do exactly what we just asked it to do. In other words, copy and paste it, resize it, and so on. Now all I've got to do is select the background layer, click onto a selection tool, click select subject. Notice I don't even need to be visible of that background layer at this point. Obviously, for a finer selection, a finer, more control, you want to be doing that and things really. So once it's done, the wheel of death will kind of stop. And if I was to, come on. Remember, we're working on full res files, but we did realize that we've had some RAM die on that computer today, so we're going to get some more. Okay, so let's just wait for that wheel. That wheel is still going. That's why you need 32 giga RAM or whatever it is. Okay, so you can see the selection, yeah? Even though I've got the background layer selected, basically it's still showing me the actual background. So with this one now, still selected the background layer, if I go to Control J, it copies the actual selection, and now all I've done is actually gone to move it up on top and things. The reason, so you'll see already now, the cutout is not bad in fact, but we need to actually disguise this just a little bit more. But the first thing would be, in fact, to really, is this the background? So I don't think it is. It looks too fake. It's too sharp, in other words, yeah? Again, Brandon, what's this called again, if this was a match fight or whatever? Match card. Match card, is it? There you go. I didn't know that. I don't follow wrestling, even though I'm probably giant haystacks or whatever it would be, and I should be in the ring. Anyway, so one of the things that I would have done, in fact, within the action is to convert this layer into a smart object. Now, if you haven't renamed the layer, if you haven't moved the layer, whatever it would be, it's transformed that selection, yeah? If you look at the bottom of this action here, as long as I've got this still selected, this layer 1 as it were, I can continue the action on, even though it's kind of doing other things now. So I can actually go to the record button once more. And then what I want to do is right click on the gray area, and then I want to convert it to smart object. Okay, now there's multiple reasons for doing this. Let me just press the stop key a minute. There's multiple reasons for doing this. The main reason I just did it was I can now go in and go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. We are live today, so if you've got any questions and you want to get them into us, then please feel free. Okay, so let's go 6.8 pixels, have a little look at that. And if it's not very good, let's just go in again and double click it, and we'll make it a little bit more. A bit too much. There we go. Okay, so the benefit of this now, it's remembered the smart blur, as it were, going on. But if I want to change the background, so if I want to go to replace content, so I right-clicked on that grey area, like when I turned it into a smart object, I can go now and actually choose one of the other backgrounds. Now, obviously, they might not have been scaled the same or whatever it would be, but in a normal world, pretty much we're done. Let me just free transform that background up. Definitely want to get rid of the football pitch, and then probably make that a lot bigger. And so within a very short time, in fact, We've kind of changed the background. We've given it some bit of a wow factor and everything else with it and things really. And then as far as this is concerned, let's duplicate this layer for a minute. And then if I wanted to add another effect, I could go into rasterize, render, and go into lighten lens flare. We'll just put it up here coming from one of the lights. Just pressing OK. So now it's kind of coming in from the kind of the lighting from above and things really. And obviously if we didn't like it, just Control Z it and go back in again and actually go into the filter. And I don't know why that isn't doing it. Switch on the layer would help, Mark. Cancel that. Switch the layer on, it will help. Let me just Control Z. There we go. And we'll go into filter, render, lens flare again, or lighten effects, whichever you want. In this case, want to really take it away and just add a little bit more in. Press OK. And then if we don't want it to actually affect the actual face, whatever it is, this is when we could actually bring in a mask. B for brush, D for default, X to put black on top. Then you just actually go ahead and actually kind of paint out the arm and a little bit of the face. But in a darker background, you'll see the lens effect more and things really. So we've kind of really taken that image, you know, from a kind of a plain old background to something quite special. Let's roll backwards. Any questions so far, Brandon?
Just the one about the backgrounds.
Yep.
Somebody said they much prefer the plainer background. What's your preference?
Yeah, you know, keep it simple, really. I like the old master kind of things, as far as just to give it a little bit of texture or some button. We've got, so for instance, if we go and choose one of the ones we shot last, so during the Academy Live last week, let me just choose one of those images, and we'll just do a quick fix on one of those, and we'll just show another background effect. Again, I think it's just down to what is right for you and your style and your taste, or for what you're being commissioned to do. So obviously, as Brandon said, if you're being commissioned to do the likes of a kind of a fight card, yeah, then basically you'll probably need to give it a little bit of pop, but they'll probably actually be doing all their own work, so their graphic designers are going to do all that. But as far as if I prefer a plain background or a pattern background, I would prefer going for a much more subtle kind of view. Saying that, look at that checker background behind him there, and I think it looks all awesome. Anyway, let's get into here. So this is one of the images that we shot. Let's bring it through the raw process first, okay? We will be looking at a variety of 5 or 6 images and kind of looking at the flow of those as well. Let's just bring this into the raw. Remember, they've all had their metadata applied. I cannot process any file unless they've been renamed and a metadata is being applied across the actual image itself. And don't you just love it? Show them the screen, I don't mind. That's not me, that's Photoshop doing its thing. Okay, today it'll be good. There we go. All right, so we're there. Right, what do I want to do? So I want to apply the kind of the basic fixes that I do. So the first thing would be contrast is going to go to somewhere like a +8, yes. And then the blacks is going to be in a -8. I'm just going to type it in. So just 8 in there, -8 on the other one. Shadow, slight increase into the +7 to +8 again. And then as far as the texture, in this case, because it's male and it's fashion, I do increase it just a little bit more, as far as we're giving it a little bit of sharpening edge and so on with it. But as far as everything else is fine, it's pretty good. As far as the whites is concerned, okay, we can see they're mucky. They could be fixed, but if I do that, I'm going to cause a problem on the forehead more than it already is. So I don't really want to fix that much here. I want to fix it in the post. So once the kind of the basics are done of that, whether you're going to apply a curve to it and so on, but I'm pretty much done. I'd say save that once more. If I just press the Alt key when I want to save it as the JPEG, wherever it is, it doesn't open up the next screen for me to where do I want to save it to. Yeah, in this case, I'm saving it to the actual last folder. And then if I just press done, And if we go into the other Jabaz raw, let's go through here, and we're going to go into that Jabaz JFR. You can see it's there now. We'll open that one up by just double click into it. That'll open it up within Photoshop. And so if we kind of look at this as a quick fix first, so because I want to just erase these elements on the side, okay, all I'm going to just D for default first, yeah? That puts the white as the background behind. Now this white on this image is not white. How can I tell that? Is because as soon as I basically go Control L and then I hit the white point and I press it into a dark area, you can see straight away I've created more of a white background here, yeah? So I've just pressed OK. Now, because I didn't duplicate the layer wherever it is, I was destruction, so I'm destructing the image. If I hit the E for erase though now, yeah, and just make that a little bit bigger so I can actually bring back the original. I didn't crop it or anything else, so basically what I've done is I've just erased the pixels back, what was actually on him. Now if I uncheck the erase to history on the top and I just hit the erase tool again, I can just get rid of those lights that were actually over on the side and things. So we're pretty much, we're fixing the image to the point that it's done if we wanted a white background and so on. We could go in, obviously, if we're kind of really worried about the forehead here, bit of oily skin, so we could actually do a kind of a patch, kind of actually going onto the image, retouching wise. Obviously, we've got some acne as well and things really. Depends on how much you need to do to your image. But for as a quick fix, let's just go in for a minute and we'll just soften the highlight on the face. I'm just using the patch tool. You often see this used in the likes of basic retouching for spotty teenagers and everything else with it. But it's also a good way to actually get rid of the highlight. We don't want to kind of matte it fully because then we'll have no 3D to the face, the roundness of the face and things really. So let me just do that part there. Any more questions coming through, Brandon? Feel free to jump in at any stage, mate. So we're pretty much kind of fixed most of the forehead trouble as well. We haven't worked in a destructive way at all yet. Let's do that kind of fix onto the background again, shall we? So let's just go and change it. Remember, at this point, I would go in and basically either save it as a PSD file if I'm going to continue to work if there was layers, or I was going to bring layers in and I wanted to save the image for later on with layers and things really. We have just actually begun to actually stream or on the Academy site, a brand new Photoshop for beginners and things really. So if you do want to actually kind of catch up with some of these things, we're dropping a new film each week on Photoshop for beginners, bit of a structure kind of working all the way through to even hone in skills. Let's go and grab another background, shall we? So we could actually create ourselves a new background as well. So let's go in and make a new action. And at this point, we're going to go in and call it white brick. And just going to press OK. And now I'm just going to go to File, Open. We're going to go back and find the background folder where we were. Pressing OK. Then it's Control A to copy, so select all, Control C to copy it, shut it down, and then we're going to go to Control V, which is going to paste it on top, and then you can see it doesn't match the pixels. Well, in this case, I'm going to interpolate it. That means that we're making it bigger than its actual size, but because it's really not needing to be sharp, and it's going to have a blur effect put on it anyway, it's okay to do what I'm doing here. Something that was so small, if you were trying to actually use this as a part of the image, it really would look terrible if it went to print and things really, all right? So even though Photoshop does an amazing job of making things bigger than they are, you want to actually make sure that you're covering your bases. Right, so just like we did before, but this time I'll just switch off that layer, select the background layer, click onto a selection tool, then select subject. That will just actually select around him, including a little bit of the flare around the left-hand arm of the jacket there. There's loads of different ways to make selections, but Photoshop itself has become so intelligent over the past few years, you know, really go with it instead of fight against it. And get some more RAM, yeah. So let's let that come through. Come on, today it'd be good. Did you say you had a question there while this is doing it? Nope, okay. So that's made the selection of J. He says, yep, Control J to duplicate it. Don't get that confused with controlling the model. And that's going to just duplicate him himself. And then, as we said already, what we're going to do is drag the layer between the two photographs. And now we can see already that it kind of gives us a little bit more of a background. Remember, if you're unsure about what kind of level of blur that you're going to apply things to, right-click it, the layer, and then convert into a smart object. That means it's kind of a non-destructive change that we're going to be doing, and we can go back and edit those changes at any stage. Today with that wheel going on, there we go. And we're just going to go into filter, blur, and Gaussian blur again. There we go. He looks like he's f2.8 away from the background now. And again, what I want to do now is perhaps add a little bit more of a realism, a little bit of shadow, whatever it would be. So if I duplicate that layer, and now I select the kind of the layer 2 as we're seeing here, yeah, and I just go in and Control L. So I'm going to adjust the brightness and the darkness. We want to actually make it almost pure black by dragging the black point to the right hand side. If I just hold the Control key and basically drag him out, you can see already now that we've got a kind of the inverted image or the blackened image of him and things really to there. So we would naturally have not a sharp kind of image here. So we once more want to go into Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. Would I want to actually turn this into a smart object as well? I don't think I'd bother. And all I'm going to do now is drag it to actually just put it a little bit lower. We can see the light is coming from the top left, so his shadow is correct here compared to here, yeah? So if I just put it down a little bit lower, and at this point now, if I just grab the opacity, we can start to actually just turn that back a little bit more. So it's allowing some detail in the background. So yeah, pretty cool and things really. The only thing it's doing probably, it's showing the cutout on this edge because we flared the light in the demo, didn't we? So now you can see, because we put black behind him, that shadow doesn't look as good and things really. But again, it's all down to a matter of taste really. Okie doke. So let's kind of leave that one there. Shut that one down. Let's just do a quick workflow on a series of images. Wrong button. I was just going back to raw. Okay, doke. So as far as when we make the adjustments to images, we're really working on things that really aren't going to change much. So if I select all those images together, and if I had a dedicated studio look, I could select all of those images, just click into my presets, and then go into the likes of a preset that is below here. The ones that we've been working on these machines, in fact, they're on this machine. It's just been following in through some of our boudoir basics. But you can also see that Photoshop or RAW gives you some stylized effects yourself if you want to not do much of the work. So I would say if you're doing like an Instagram shoot like we're doing here, I've just used the kind of the portraits, looking at the deeper skin or the kind of effects that are coming through. But again, these are kind of the presets, whether you want them to be yours or you're going to actually use Photoshop's own kind of the presets with it. As is, I would always encourage you to pretty much go in and do your own, create your own is absolutely key, because then you know how to affect them, to change them and so on with it, and you can obviously save them out to be used time and time again, like are on mine. So if I was looking at a basics here, we would basically not reduce the likes of the highlights and so on. You've already seen that we increase the contrast by 8, we do a -8 in the black, we kind of open the shadow up just a touch, we reduce both the whites down a fraction and highlights with it. As a rule, we usually add in the likes of a gradient, a vignette around the image as well, but pretty much as is, it's pretty good. And all I'll do now is a white click and then kind of clean up the white by kind of clicking into the area. At this point, if a lot of spots on somebody, I can take the texture down. That'll just soften the kind of the skin area. We want to avoid from kind of dragging the clarity down, because that's the mid-tone sharpness. That'll make it go a little kind of fake blur and things really. So because of his skin on the head and everything else with it, the minus of the texture, quite a big change there, will make a difference. So from here, of course, remember, I can either just click the down arrow or alt click the down arrow. If I click the down arrow by itself, it opens this window up. However, if I alt click the arrow, it means that it's going to save the images one at a time, but it's going to be saving them to the last folder I saved to. And because I'm working with the same client, it would obviously go from there. So you can see, you know, it's about, you know, what, a second and a half to actually kind of process each of the images. So it's no big deal. You'll find that it looks a little bit slow on the left-hand side, the bottom left-hand corner, but then all of a sudden they'll be rapidly done. Depends on kind of what's going on, and obviously the speed of your machine. So Photoshop itself though, when we're kind of wanting to work with the images, we have got a problem. Houston. Here we go. Let's just double click onto the folder here. So in the setup of Photoshop that I use, this black window, if I double click into it, it's basically open. That's what it's asking me, what do I want to do. One of the films that we dropped on the Photographer Academy a few weeks ago was creating your own Polaroid effect, kind of creating some images and so on with it. We also dropped some kind of light leaks and everything else with it, depends on the kind of thing that you want. So the Photoshop Polaroid that we created, in fact, we made quite large. It's a 14-inch by 11-inch Polaroid in the perfect classic scaling as far as sizes was concerned. So it's basically quite a large file, but this would be big enough, even though it's a 14-inch, it would be big enough to actually print up to about 30 inches without any trouble. And once it's kind of opened itself, you'll see that we're working once more with the smart objects again. So this is Anna L that we shot a few weeks ago, yeah? And if we just kind of now select this smart object layer and I right click it and I replace the contents. At this stage, let's go to the desktop and we go into MC Images and we go into Jabez Shoot and we'll just go into JFR. We can see those other images have now finished. So let's just go in and choose a photograph. And now, depends on the scaling of the file. So whether this image of Anna L that we just saw had been resized, basically it's kind of done our job for us. So it hasn't been cropped or whatever it is, so we can work it. And then we can kind of move this image around just a little bit. So it's a really kind of good, simple way for us to go in and kind of work on something special. Now, if you've got a little bit of a kind of a warning sign, like you can see here, it means that you haven't got the font installed and it's going to ask you to replace it with something else. So if you're running the Photoshop suite, as it were, you'll find that you'll have lots of different fonts, and it'll update itself and so on. Whereas if you're using some of the kind of the Photoshop level of Photoshop, as it were, the cheaper one, you'll basically not have the full kind of availability of all fonts and things really. You can actually export and install fonts and things really, but you've just got to keep to the copyright issues with that. So you can see here that if you wanted a little bit of a presentation to an image in a slightly different way, then this would kind of allow you to actually present photographs on kind of model cards or whatever it would be, or a slightly different look and feel to your website, or you might be looking for something to actually just make your website model page or your client page a little bit more kind of special by adding in their name and a background or whatever it be. But yeah, there's different things here for different people, and once this is done, of course, we would layer and flatten, press an OK, and at this point Shift Control S, we would then actually go back into the Jabez folder at this point, and then this would just be turned into a JPEG, and then just pressing save. We usually save up to 10. Once that's done, we can shut it down. It's basically done. If I was going to use the same Polaroid with the same name, I wouldn't have flattened the image. I would just gone save as JPEG, and then it would have flattened the image for a brief second while I saved it as a JPEG, but it would have actually then kind of stayed as a multi-layered document to be able to move from there. Right, let's just look at that funky kind of effect, shall we, before we finish. Any questions there, Brandon, before we go on? We were talking about the kind of the real edginess to an image, and we saw it with the boxer right at the beginning of the shoot. Today, like we've got here. We'll just bring those into RAW. So if I've got an effect that I want to put onto another image, the easiest way is a preset, of course, yeah? If not though, if I've already done the work on one and I want it on another, if I select both, select both images, Control A, yes, and then all I've got to do is basically Alt S, or wrong button there, Mark. Alt S, and it's basically the synchronization, and if I press OK, then basically whatever effects I did on the image on the left is now going to actually be applied to the image on the right. So a much more kind of cooler effect and things really. And really what we're doing is pushing the texture and the clarity very, very high. We're looking at the contrast range of the image to be very high. We're in the blacks, we're trying to actually make them quite deep, increase the shadows up more. Obviously, if you don't want as much color, then reduce the saturation down just a little bit. But from here, you start to actually really create yourself a very stylized, edgy effect, and things really depends if you like it or not. Obviously, it's all in the beauties in the eye of the beholder and things really. And at least this gives you something completely different, especially I think for your front page of websites. You've got a 3-second bounce, and if they're people visiting your website, they don't like what they see in 3 seconds, they're basically gone. So you want to make sure that whatever your portfolio is, whether it's an app, your website, your Facebook page, etc., Instagram as well, you've got to make sure that you want to stay there and things. So if you're looking for a stylized look and feel to your Instagram account, you could actually create a preset that you're pretty much applying to all of your kind of images before they're uploaded. And that's it. That's us done. Brandon, have I forgotten anything? I think we've done it. Great. Thanks for joining me live. We're back next week shooting boudoir in the studio. What are we shooting next week? Do you remember? Instagram-y shoot, is it? Brill? Love Island-y kind of thing. Instagram shoot, so I've been told. So we'll see you all live next week. Take care. Bye-bye.